I will talk about some evidences of what scientists, or maybe not scientists directly, because science has its limits, but how this initiation, this start in life is important, and all the miracle of all its pieces in some ways. That's okay. So what is conscious conception? I found a definition in a web page, I think from APA, which is a spiritual process in which parents want to participate fully and consciously. So it is talking about spirituality, and it also means in a way that there is some kind of preparation to it, something that parents can participate since the beginning. It's not just happening. And then I added my own definition afterwards to be a little more precise, which is for myself an alignment, which means to really be connected with the fact that I'm welcoming a new soul, that I am welcoming a being, and that I'm putting myself in alignment for that in terms of health, in terms of emotion, in terms of practicality in my life, spiritually. So that's so we can just meet baby and parents. And then the other one is the awareness for the parents conceiving a baby that we are having a role, like says some scientists, of being engineers, because all the influence of what's happening with the baby in the womb is really building the basis of happiness, not only emotional happiness, mental happiness, and health. So it's this awareness is very important for the future parents. And in my practice at this time, I've been led somehow to work with parents having this difficult path to conceive a baby. So I will talk a little bit about that later. So as I said, as it is a spiritual journey that I want to participate in, it does means it starts at some point. And when does it start, really? Of course, it will depend for each parents. Maybe sometimes you have a baby arriving and they have been totally not conscious about it. That has been the path of the baby to arrive in a family who was not especially expecting them. But and we hope more and more cases, the conception, like when you conceive a project, it really starts when you start to have the idea, the wish, the dream. Even parents have dreams sometimes at some point that is like a sign, no? And then Bruce Lipton, which is a well-known now biologist, is even saying that the conceived cell is collecting all the genes that will be part of that conceived cell, is really collected by the body 3 months before the real fecundation, you say fecundation in conception moment. And the other data that we have from Dr. Hammer and the people working in that line of total biology is all that even in a psychological level, all of what is happening in the 1 year before the moment of conception has some influences in terms of the program that we may have inherited. Might be maybe the purpose, or why do the parents maybe want a boy to take over the business, or whatever is happening in terms of what the society is living at those times, if it's abundant moments or more scarcity, war, and all of that is having an influence up to 1 year before the real moment. So, and of course, in ancient traditional society, many of them have different rituals where they prepare and they kind of know there is their initial call for parents being prepared to receive the soul somehow. I won't enter into details because we have the time of the 15 minutes. Then the other part is the spiritual experience that people have had, and I've this Elizabeth Hallett recorded the experience of 180 parents really having had some messages and some connections with the baby before the conception itself. So that's one data that we have. And of course, you may know the book of Daniel Givaudan, and maybe there are others related on that also, of channelizing and writing down the journey of a soul coming into the body. I'm not sure in English what is the name of the book, because I know it in French and in Spanish. Les 9 marches y los 9 peldaños in English. I don't know what the name is. And of course, you have all the regressions experience, the altered state of consciousness, and you know that in rebirthing we have lived and relived memories of conceptions, so that's not new for most of you, no? And one thing that I always remember my couples when I work with them is, like, it's not only a matter of you and your husband, it's a matter of 3 or sometimes more, because it's the connection between you 2 guys and the being coming. So as a spiritual journey, for me, it's a spiritual journey for the soul coming in, but it's also a spiritual journey for the parents. So as the soul coming in, what I've been, in my experience, working with couples, working with myself first, and of course with clients in rebirthing, is how much we have maybe ignored, or the consciousness of how the soul coming into earth is like a big journey for her. Can you say her, the soul? So it's like a leap, no? It's like going on a big journey with almost no luggage, and you don't know which planet you're going to, new language, new family, even though it's it's a big journey in a way for the soul, and it's not always easy for her to really agree at all levels to be there, even though at the soul level, which is more the divine part, it's definitely, well, it's quite evident that this part has chosen this evolution time on earth, because that's the best that will serve her in her purpose. And in that way, the family, parents is chosen, the best family, so that the context, even if we call it dramatic in our maybe in our human eyes, in a way at the soul level will always be the perfect context for doing this evolution. For the parents, and I'm seeing that even more working with parents with difficulties of conceptions, because they are doing an amazing growth journey, and I'm sorry in a way to say that the fertility problems increasing that we are seeing in the world, in somehow is also giving more couples opening up to another understanding of what is conceptions and entering in this world of consciousness because of the difficulties that they have had. So it's like always some negative aspect is giving something positive. So anyway, for them, it's I've been working with them, especially having them realizing that how, even if the path is really hard, in a way they always are learning and receiving a gift from this path that they are taking. And then some data on the miracle of conception. So as you know, it's a 90-year-old project, even more, because you have all your lifetime. And it's also a 3-generational project, as the eggs that will conceive your baby were already present in your mother. So the grandmother, the mother, and the baby are all linked, even physically, cellularly talking. And remember that you are 1/70 billions of possible combinations. So you can just praise yourself for being this amazing, unique being that you are. The other data that we now know is that it's not an encounter that it just can happen. Basically, in terms of reference, it's like two pearls of a courier, no? Two pearls in a tunnels meeting in a tunnels of 30 meters long. So you can imagine that it's, and in fact, we know now that they are attracted to each other, the sperm and the egg, by biochemical, even vibrations. There is also a change in paradigm between competition and collaboration. In fact, we now know that some groups of sperms have a function of protection, so that no other ones are coming in when they are, and the others are just grouping together, so they kind of motivate yourself when you are in a group than just walking the hill alone, I guess. And again, it's an amazing process between the feminine and the masculine, because the egg needs to release one of these filament, I don't know if you say that in English, filament of DNA, in order to welcome the masculine. So it's really losing kind of its personality, half of its personality, to welcome the masculine. And you know that the masculine is just surrendering to the feminine. So it's an amazing trust and leap of love between both energies, no? So it's a quite from which one and one, of course, give the third part. So oh yeah, and of course we know that each cell, even the first cell, it has its own intelligence, so that it's completely able to divide, grow, and just organize every mission of every cells to build this organ and this organ, and it's an amazing community working in a perfect harmony of co-creation. I think we have to learn ourselves still from the cells, biology. So I think that's what I wanted to share with you about conscious conception, and of course the importance of breathing. Breathing is helping us to connect with ourselves, and therefore helping the parents or the future parents to connect even more with the source, and therefore with the baby coming. And I'm working a lot with parents so that they can remove their own trauma about conception, because I've worked a lot with them about their own, I don't want to be here somewhere in myself. And therefore it's hard for them to welcome a new being with that perception. So I usually work with them, you know, with rebirthing and breath work to clean all these memories and to understand the big picture, not the human aspect of it. So it kind of gives them more peace and help them to reconnect with themselves. So I don't know what the time I've been, but I think you
are doing beautifully.
Okay.
Perfect.
Perfect, 15 minutes?
Yeah, you can add something wonderful for the next 2 minutes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I want to say that I'm really honored to have been guided by all these couples I've been working with, because it helped me also to kind of understand what at the cellular level may be happening when conception may happen by other means than the natural making love that we all know, and how we can help, how we can help bringing love and bringing warmth when it's not so obvious, when it's not just happening in the ideal way. And I think myself personally have been conceived for children. 2 of them decided to leave before being born, but none of these conceptions have been in the ideal model. So probably that's why my mission is to help more in these fields. No, one is coming very early, the other one is waiting too long, and we are not even expecting him anymore, and things like that. No, anyway, so I love that being able to bring this new vision to the couple, so they relax, they release the stress, they trust, and they know it's just not only them, which I think that's important. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Irelanda.
When we imagine a baby in the womb, we imagine her to be peaceful, disconnected, unaffected by the world around her, quietly floating like an astronaut in space. Yet nothing could be further from the truth. The womb is a vital place of human development, where nature meets nurture, where genes are expressed, where babies and their brains are grown. And how all this happens is directly connected to outside influences.
There's always been a mythology about pregnancy, but now actually some of that mythology is turning out to be rather more true than we expected.
New research has shown that a mother's stress level can have a significant impact on her unborn baby.
The emotional state of a woman in pregnancy can affect the development of her baby in the womb and actually can have long-term effects on her child.
Research has shown that unborn babies can be affected by arguments, anxiety, stress brought on by natural disasters, and even 9/11.
The child could be more likely to have emotional problems, to have behavioural problems, to be slower at learning. Different children are affected in different ways.
By looking after the emotional state of pregnant women, we can reduce the risk of problems in later life. Fathers, families, and employers all have a role to play.
I'd like to start by saying what a great pleasure it is to be here talking about such an important topic with people who are so dedicated to being awake. Because it's really important now, especially in the planetary moment that we are, that those of us that are committed to consciousness have the information that we need to help other people wake up too, so that we can affect the kind of change that's so badly needed. So my piece of this is to talk about the importance of the environment, the baby's first environment. What happens to the prenate in the time from preconception, conception, in utero life, all the way through the birth. Before I go into that piece, though, I'd like to share how I came to be interested in pre- and perinatal psychology and health, because it's an interesting doorway in. When I started practicing in the 70s, my first passionate specialty was health psychology, the interfacing of mind and body. And then in the 80s, what started to happen was that people in my practice were very ill with the disease that didn't have a name yet, which was AIDS. And that propelled me into working with death and dying, because the people that I was helping with their illness ended up passing on. In those days, AIDS was not a treatable disease as it is now. And so I discovered something in that tremendously rich time, personally, of sitting with people who were facing their own passing, that so a very rarefied, energetic field would form with people who wanted to face their passing consciously, that wanted to heal their life back to the wholeness that was always there and that they had lost sight of, so that they could embody it as they passed from this life and depart with some grace. Usually in the most beautiful ways with a big exhalation. And I bring that up partly because in our humanity as transcendent beings in this human experience, we seem to have these bookends, don't we, of our incarnation, the first beginning of our physicality, which we used to think of as birth, and now we know better, right? Through this lens of pre- and perinatal understanding, we understand conception or preconception, as Veronique was so articulately explaining to us. But the other end of that is the passing. And so it's important when you start to understand what's going on in the very early setting down of developmental templates, in the beginning orienting and preparation towards the world that we're going to inhabit as an embodied being, that the primal setup is actually around survival, because we have a body that's not going to go with us, right? And so we orient primally around threat, around survival, around fear, and also as beings who are born dependent, we understand all the way to a cellular level that if mama doesn't love us and she sets us down next to the path, we're probably not going to make it. So that also informs our psychology and our biology, along with the fact that we are tribal by nature. François was alluding to my co-therapists, my two dogs that are with me in my practice. And in the same way that those are pack animals, we are tribal animals. And we need each other all the time. We're interdependent. We also know that on a cellular level. Slow down. Thank you. So what does that have to do with what we're learning about in time in utero? We are consciously experiencing the mother's experience. We are consciously tracking how she feels about us. We are setting down neural pathways in our brain as the brain is developing that are very much connected with the hormonal soup that we are cooking in her belly. That means that if mama is flooded with stress hormones, we will be flooded with stress hormones. That if mama is happy and calm and balanced, we will be flooded with endorphins and oxytocin. And as that happens, our cell walls will create receptors that are sensitive to those hormones that will serve us very well in our bonding with each other and in all of our tribal relations, whatever form they might have in our current culture. So what's happening there is profoundly important in terms of the kind of development that's taking place for our orientation about the world. So I'd like to just offer a couple, this is also very broad strokes, so we only have a few minutes to talk, but so I've chosen just a couple of pieces of research that have come forward in the pre- and perinatal health and psychology realm that really struck me, that also illustrate the long-term implications for that developmental process that's going on prior to birth. So here's one. As I'm sure most of you know, we are born with our cerebral cortex still undeveloped. And it goes through two growth times in our lifetime. One is from birth to 12 months, and the other one is from puberty to the early 20s. And so in babies, it turns out that we're in a pregnant belly that was with a woman that was chronically stressed, so flooded pretty consistently with stress hormones. What's been found is that their cerebral cortex actually does not fully develop in the same way that a baby's would that is born to a mother who was not chronically stressed in pregnancy. So it makes a lot of sense if you're thinking in evolutionary terms and survival terms that the hindbrain, the primal brain, fight-flight mechanism needs to stay dominant if your perception is that you're coming into a time where you're going to be in fight-flight a lot to survive. You don't want to think about whether you're going to be eaten by the tiger. You want to react, right? So the cerebral cortex takes a secondary role. That's pretty profound implication, right, about what's going on there. Another one is that women who, for cultural reasons, sometimes say, "Oh, I don't want to gain much weight when I'm pregnant. I want to keep my very slender body and restrict calories during the pregnancy." The baby will learn that it's being born into a time of famine, and that child's metabolism will actually stay slow all the way through middle age, which is as far as it's been tracked so far. We don't know if it ever changes. Now, we understand, I need to say quickly, especially as breath workers, that everything can be transformed, right? I got to say that now. Okay, thank you. So one of the things that I learned when I was working with death and dying was how to inhabit that sacred space with that person passing. After years of that, I turned to working with birth. I thought it would be wonderful to work with birth after working with death so much. And what I found, much to my surprise, was that I was inhabiting the same sacred space that I had been sharing with the people who were consciously dying. That the women who were consciously pregnant, who were interested in embodying their own alignment, in regaining their own wholeness out of the wounds and the early life imprints and the challenges of their life, to move from being reactive and fearful to being responsive and joyful, that wanted to do that work, to come into wholeness, were also in sacred space. And what I mean by that is that it's outside of regular linear time and reality. All kinds of alchemy and transformation is very possible very quickly in a way that's available to that time that isn't for most of us at other times, except, of course, in the breath. In the breath. So what happens in that time, if you understand what can be done with the breath, is it only makes sense to have that be one of the focal points of helping someone be awake in the pregnancy, is to learn to breathe, to understand that resetting the activation from a reaction is very readily available by conscious breathing, deep, not even connected breath, just simply slow, deep breath. It's our most available tool for activating the parasympathetic nervous system and moving out of fight-flight into rest and restore. What an important thing for a pregnant woman to understand that she can do by simply consciously breathing. And I wonder what other decisions she might make in a different way if she was simply taught to breathe deliberately and consciously every day as a practice at the start of her day. I suspect that, like the rest of us, she would make very different choices for the rest of the day, with having simply slowed down and tuned in and been with herself and felt experientially that she is connected, which is what the breath offers to us. So the baby, the prenate, is already breathing in utero. It's breathing amniotic fluid. It's attuning to the mother. It's attuning its heart rate. It's attuning respiration. It's attuning many of its body systems in utero. So if the mother consciously tunes in with her baby and offers a way to stay calm and offers a way to stay connected and actually deliberately opens a channel with that baby to be communing and talking and hearing and listening to that baby in responsive, bonded relationship even before that baby is out of her body, imagine how much more secure that attachment will be after the birth. That's also important to remember to breathe in our relationships. So she might keep that in mind with the father of the baby as well, to when they have a moment of conflict, rather than to go into defended or aggressive form, that one of them stay awake, at least one at a time, right? We should all know to do that. And to speak in attachment language, which is eyes and touch and soft voice and breath. And to be able to come into some synchronization and harmony so that that balance and that love is restored again quickly, so that there really isn't a lot of opportunity for that baby to be awash in all of those stress hormones, but instead it's being imprinted with very real witnessing and experiencing of love, of attachment, of connectedness, of calm, and with being able to self-regulate. What a wonderful advantage that child would have even before it's been born. So we're very survival-oriented. It seems to be the setup on this plane in a particular way. And in that template, in that primal setup, we tend to be fear-based. And what I'd like to suggest is that through our consciousness, and particularly through spreading that consciousness, embodying that consciousness, and therefore inspiring others to do the same, and educating about the importance of being conscious and awake and mindful of the sacredness of bringing life to the planet, that we might really change some things. We might change the paradigm from a survival-oriented paradigm to a thriving-oriented paradigm. That we might birth babies that were awash in endorphins and oxytocin, pleasure hormones, the chemicals that allow us to be bonded, to enjoy each other, to be happy as their first start, so that we might actually move towards changing the world by this very important first beginning in our embodied self, that already be there before the birth has even happened. And so what I propose to you and to each of us here is that we do our best to create a generation of babies who are born thriving, not surviving, so that they can be our next leaders, and that we be oriented towards joy and happiness and inclusion, not exclusion, and abundance rather than scarcity, and love rather than fear. Because we know where the fear has taken us, hasn't it? It's taken us to greed, it's taken us to aggression, it's taken us to all the other things that we understand. And so let's create a generation of babies and change the world one thriving baby at a time. Thank you.
We're starting to realize that the months we spend in the womb are some of the most important of our lives.
So what happens in the womb can last a lifetime.
The greatest doctor of all time, he was not Irish, he was Swiss. Paracelsus said, "Woman is the artist of the imagination, and the child in the womb is the canvas whereon she painteth her pictures." You see? So that has been known for a long time, but not by everybody. Now we have talked about conception, we have talked about birth. Apparently some people are very well in their mother's belly, especially if they are treated the way Adela was describing. But there comes a moment where you become a bit, squashed in there. So this is called birth. You have got to be born. And this is what Julie is going to talk to us about. Breathe your baby down, a new paradigm.
Thank you, everybody. Well, I started over 30 years ago in this field as a mystic. I was absolutely convinced, as I still am, that we can change the world. We can have one global family thriving and living on this planet in a sustainable, harmonious way. I'm still convinced of that. And today, I will have 15 minutes. So I'm going to share with you something about birth and how that paradigm has changed. Many of my generation grew up to think of birth as something painful. It wasn't really talked about very much. It was something a woman went into a hospital and came back, and there was the baby in her arms, if she was lucky. And when I grew up, I was told, well, of course it hurts. What do you expect to get a head this big out of a hole that big? It hurts. So, of course, who wants to go through that? And what happens when you're told, well, what is going to happen to you is going to hurt like hell? well, your body just tightens up. You want to go backwards. You want to move out the way, don't you? And what I learned over 15 years ago now, when I started to move on from the prenatal, which had been my area of speciality in the mind-body connection, to this whole process of birth. Through Mickey Mongan's work, François, the book, please, hypnobirthing, Mickey Mongan changed the paradigm of birth. First of all, for me, but for thousands, if not now, hundreds of thousands of people around the world. This technique, which is more philosophy than a technique, is now in more than 35 countries. And what did Mickey say? She said in her head, as she had her babies, well, if God made it that every single one of our organs was supposed to work naturally and easily and effortlessly without hurting, why should birth hurt? For her, this was just totally strange. And through her own experience at the end of, on her 5th pregnancy, she got to have a natural birth as she wished to, totally comfortably. Now, this is the paradigm shift. How can we move from the experience of women having birth all around the world and for centuries in this excruciating pain, and as you see in the movies, all the screaming and the pushing and the coaching and the drama of birth. Does it hurt for these women? Of course it does. But how do you explain now, today, that we've got hundreds of thousands of women birthing comfortably, easily, effortlessly, no pain? Wow, what is going on? That some have this excruciating pain and some don't. It's very simple. When you understand that if you're in fear, somebody tells you, and this is handed down from generation to generation, this is going to hurt, you tense up. And when your body is about to give birth and is preparing for birth, what needs to happen is you need to open. So, if we change our idea of how the woman's body is conceived and designed to be, that every single part of her body, of a woman, is designed to have a birth naturally, easily, I wouldn't say effortlessly, because it is a work, but without pain. If she's now told and shown how does her body work, if it's given time, if the mother is secreting her own oxytocin, the love hormone, which she's supposed to be, as she receives the most incredible gift of life into her family and life, she's supposed to be in love. She's supposed to be secreting naturally oxytocin and endorphins. What are endorphins? They are 200 times the power of up last year in India. 200 times the power of morphine. We can release this into our bloodstream at will at any moment. So if a mother is empowered with this and she knows how to secrete her own oxytocin and her own endorphins, her body is given the conditions to do what it knows how to do easily and effortlessly. So, what we need to know about these two groups of hormones, if I'm in fear and I'm running, oh my God, what's going to happen to me? This is going to hurt. I contract, I don't breathe, and my body tightens up when it wants to open. So I'm fighting against myself. Got it? And so I've got to push the baby out. This is now dinosaur age for us awake people. The new paradigm is the mother is saying, oh, okay, I get it. I know how my body works. I know what is going to happen step by step in the muscles in my body. It's a natural process. I am going to breathe. I'm going to go through with you in a minute the 3 types of breathing that we teach our mothers. And I'm going to allow my body to do what it knows how to do by getting out of the way and letting the body do what it knows how to do. So she's not afraid of what's going to happen. Oh my goodness, this is going to be such a struggle. She feels confident. When you feel confident, you relax. You feel at ease. You know that your body's intelligent. It doesn't rely on you. You don't need to think about it. Your body knows. So first of all, the confidence. Then the letting go, the learning to relax and let go. The learning to secrete oxytocin, feeling love, feeling connected, being in that state of presence with the father, if possible, of the baby, staying in their love bubble, staying in love with the baby. The mother consciously is then going to breathe, and I'll go through the different breaths with you in a minute. Breathe during what used to be called contractions over here, and now that's gone. We now call them surges or waves. Why? Because if somebody says, well, you're going to have contractions, what's going to happen is that you contract already. Because when we hear a word, that acts on us in our body, in our physiology. So if somebody says, well, it's just going to be like a surge or a wave that you're going to breathe through. Oh, yeah, that feels good. Oh, yeah, I can do that. So the mother's going to practice what we call slow breathing to accompany the surges. And then when it comes time, when she's fully dilated, she's simply going to breathe her baby down into the world. So she's totally present, she's conscious, she's wide awake, she's in love, she's secreting 200 times the power of morphine. Her body is doing what the body knows how to do. Did you know that a woman in a coma can give birth without pushing? She can. Because the body has a natural expulsion reflex. So the body and the baby together are going to do the movement to bring the baby into the world when the baby is ready. So if we rush things along, we're not respecting the natural timing. And this is where people like Joanne and the revolution of this paradigm shift are moving into respecting every woman's natural timing. And so the mother is then going to breathe consciously her baby through birth breathing into the world. So let me just go through with you the different types of breathing, because I know that's a great interest here. So the relaxation breathing. We're going to teach the mother how to initiate relaxation at will. And what we want her to do is to be able to breathe in to the count of 4, and then simply to be able to breathe out with her mouth closed through the nose to the count of 8. So it's kind of like a sigh. And allow her shoulders just to sink into the frame of her body as she lets go. However, she's not going to breathe out of her body. In her mind's eye, in her attention, she's going to keep that energy moving down into her belly, to her baby. So she starts at that time when she practices initiating relaxation, which she will do when she starts to go into labor, is to be able to just totally let go of everything, focus on her breathing, and go deeply inside until she becomes totally loosey limp. She just totally lets go until everything is just like a rag doll. And so once she's practiced that, and she will practice with her birth companion a shoulder anchor, which once she's got her body conditioned, the partner will be able to simply say to her, And now, whenever you want to go into this state of deep relaxation and I touch your shoulder, you go there. So she's practiced that. Then she gets to, okay, so what's going to happen when she has these surges? So what are these surges? It's simply when the uterus, the muscle, is going to start pulling up. And in this action of pulling up, it's going to open little by little the cervix. So this is the opening and thinning stage. And now, if the mother, instead of like this contracting when there's the pulling up, she breathes very deeply, and this is what she will have practiced in what we call a slow breathing, as long as she can. So she's going to take in a very long, slow breath and send this down into her uterus. So what is she doing? A muscle that's starting to work needs oxygen. So she's oxygenating, deeply oxygenating that muscle. She's completely relaxed, so there's no resistance. And little by little, the uterus is going to be able to do its work and open the cervix. Now, when she's fully dilated, and she will feel, oops, that's it now, the baby's going to be born. Instead of pushing, or at least not being told by somebody external to herself to push, she feels it. And she says, right, my baby's going to come, now's the time to breathe my baby down. So here now, she joins her imagination, because what we imagine has a physiological reaction as well. So she's joining the imagination of herself being completely dilated and open. The baby starting its journey to really now come out. And so she's wide awake, totally relaxed. Her body is doing the natural expulsion reflex. And she is participating fully with her love, with her breathing, with her presence, her consciousness. And the body does the work. No resistance. So she breathes her baby out. And most mothers experience something which is a peak experience. Something which they say, wow, I didn't know it could feel so amazing. They want to go back and do it again. They have another baby. Exactly. And so this whole thing of childbirth being, just something that a woman has got to suffer through, that she's, for her great sins of having this child, is now turning into an amazing experience for couples that they wouldn't miss for anything in the world, to be able to consciously, without any interference, birth their baby into the world and be there to receive this incredible gift in their lives. So I'd just like to show you a very short hypnobirth in water. There are many online that you can go and see. There are not two births the same. This is a very short one because we don't have much time. But I'm sure that you will see that if you had any ideas that birth has to be pushing, screaming, even grunting, and all that, this is a big change for you.
For however many years I've been with birth, I cry at every single newborn who's born. And the moment that a child is born, after all this process of coming through in the creation of a family, the moment that a child is born, it is a moment that we've never seen before. It's like we see the way the moon is rising on this night, and we see the way the clouds are coming through. Or with one girl, she was born and the crickets all began to sing the moment she was born. Because in that moment that we're born is a moment that's never happened before and will never happen again. And this we see in birth. We see how unbelievable, an incredible miracle it is that we have arrived through this journey. And here we are, never ever seen before, never ever been in this way before. This new soul arrived here on this planet. And so when this baby arrives, and first of all, right away we bring baby right to mother, right onto her, skin on skin. And those of us who are birth attendants, midwives, we step back. Because in this moment, this is now all of this process that we've seen. Now this mother, this baby, this father, or another mother, when we have two mothers, this is the time when we're in the sacred hour. And it is this moment of agape, if you know this. This is like this kind of a love that is almost transcends us as humans, that we are in a state of awe. And so every single moment, every breath, every touch is sacred in this moment. And the babe, who is skin on mother, is now breathing her in. Now you understand the babe has been in the womb all this time, so just even the air feels very unusual for the baby. So have you seen these Russian babies that are all wrapped up and like this? They actually like it because they've come from this kind of a place. And so this whole place out here is very strange, except the sound of mother's voice, the smell of her. So in fact, the skin on skin, recently scientists have shown that the skin on skin is actually a transference of bacteria, because newborn babies are born without any kind of an immune system. And so that transference of bacteria actually is an allowance for lifelong health for the baby, if allowed in those moments to be skin on skin. And so in this time where the mother, the father, everybody's eyes are just like there's a photograph of me with my daughter when she was just a few moments old. It's my favorite photograph in the world because we're both looking at each other with our eyes so wide and just like, wow, who are you? And it's as much of a journey for the baby as it is for me. I have these notes because I'll talk forever. So on the so the smell, the voice, the touch, the bacteria, but the way that we surround the family, that in a typical kind of a hospital experience, the baby, there's all the things of rushing the baby over to the monitor and checking all the things and washing the baby, and this is not necessary. There's vernix that's on the baby. There's little tiny hairs that are on the baby. And this is all part of the juiciness of the baby that has been held in the womb in this time. And so it's so important that the baby can just hear and can see and can touch mother and father. So even in the kinds of births where sometimes we are in hospital, because that's how birth can be, that it can go certain ways. Then if the mother has had another kind of a birth, a C-section, for example, we make sure the father is the first one to be there with the baby. So there's at least one of the parents who's skin on skin, smell, touch, taste. And then when we see these babies in their lives, that will be the parent that they will really seek out as the nurturer, is the one they first connected with. I'm holding here in my hand some cauliflower essence that's from our garden where we have a birthing house. And I'm going to actually pass it around, but I'll tell you about it first. This is cauliflower essence, and so we give this to the mother in the couple of weeks before she's birthing. And what this is that each soul, each new baby who is born comes with each one of our own unique purposes in this life. This is true. What this essence does is that the baby coming into the body and into the presence of really being embodied into their body, this helps their soul purpose and their soul essence more fully incarnate into the body they've been given. Because it's a very physical thing for the baby in those moments after birth that it's like, whoa, I used to be the Buddha, and what's this thing here? You know, like this whole body is just such an enormous experience. So this is a flower essence, and with the mum, she takes it under her tongue for the couple of weeks before she births. And then in the couple of weeks afterwards, she takes this and it transfers to the baby through the breast milk. And we see these children, because I live in a small town, we really see they're very clear in their soul essence. And so not only then for birth, but in major transitions in our life, you know, we are given these transitions and these tests sometimes to come more fully into who we are as souls in our beings. And so we also use this essence when we're in major moments of transition. So I'll just hand this to you, Francois. If you can just it's flower essence, so try not to touch the actual dropper, but just put a few drops under your tongue and pass it on. And it'll bless your transitions this week. So another thing that we practice in our birthing house, of course it's the choice of who the parents are, is lotus birth. And so this is the practice of keeping the umbilical cord still connected to the baby and then also to the placenta of the mother. And so what has been shown is that for sure if we allow the placentas to stay attached for at least an hour or two after the baby's born, all this blood comes into the baby and fills the baby and is very healthy for the baby. And so for some parents, they will actually keep the umbilical cord attached to the baby and to the placenta for the 4 or 5 days until it dries and falls off. And so this is a great commitment, though. It means you're going to keep baby and placenta all in one bed, because you're not going to go out shopping or visiting the family or something. But if we look at most traditional birth cultures, in almost all of them, the mother, and if the father's allowed to be part in those more traditional cultures, but the mother and baby will usually be secluded and not around the energies of anybody else for those 4 to 5 days. And that length of time it takes for the stump off of where the umbilical cord has dried, and for it to fall off, that is a precious, precious time. That what is really happening is the family is now incarnating in their bodies together. And it's also true that a babe is born without an immune system. And so, again, the preciousness of being with the mother's milk, to be skin on skin, but again with this stump falling off, the traditional cultures had it right. That to keep our mothers and fathers and babies protected, there's also psychic energy not to be part of as well. Can you... You're making me stop. Thank you. So when the babe is born, there's usually 9 stages that the babe will go through. And if we just allow the baby to be totally left to his or her own devices, you would be so amazed at how awake the babies are. And so when they're first born, there may be the first breath, but not like you see in the movies where the doctor has the baby upside down and is swatting the bum. You know, the babe will actually have their own breath on their own. And those of us who are attending births, we do want to make sure that happens first. And then from there, so the very first thing is a breath. The very first thing. And then the very last thing we do when we leave is the last breath. I always say to people, breath work is what's in between. How well we do the rest of that. And then there is the next stage is this period of relaxation and just the skin to skin. And to allow for that, the babe, just like the mother, to just allow for that relaxation. And then there's a sense of activity now. The babe starts to kind of notice and look around and pay attention. And this is something that I just started as a practice, but I teach the parents, is to look the baby in the eyes and say, you remember. You remember who you are. You remember why you're here. And you will always remember. And every single baby, full on, totally is like the Dalai Lama in front of us, will look us in the eyes and it's like, well, yeah, that's a no-brainer. Like, they know it. And so nowadays in my life, when I see a baby on a mother's backpack, I'll just telepathically say, you remember? And the babies will go, yeah. Because I feel like we did an episode where we did the forgetting part, and I think we can just let that go. Why don't we just keep the remembering right from the start? Let's just forget about the forgetting part, you know? And so then as the babe then now starts to open their eyes and look around, and they start to move their mouth, they start to feel their fingers. And it's amazing. I know at one of the jigs, someone brought a film, and you'll actually see the baby start. If the baby is here, the baby will actually start to crawl up the mother, searching for the breast. So this whole idea that we think we have to do it or make it happen, it's already innately within us. And so again, imagine this is all quite taxing for the baby. So the babe will also have little periods of rest as all of this is happening. And we're talking moment to moment. So this first hour, it can feel like it's an eternity, and it can feel like it's like this. And I know we've all had those moments where we just completely lose all track of any sense of time. We're just in that eternal time. So then, as I say, then the babe will start to do this crawling and start to come up to the mother, and then between the mother and the father and the babe is this sense of familiarization, where there may be touch, and the babe may start to lick the breast and start to familiarize with the nipple, and look at the mother and make sounds, and of course the mother has been and the father has been voices the babe has heard, and so their voices really want to be the only sound in the room. We don't really want any of these other, Dr. Smith, please come to surgery or something, you know. And so the babe may stick their hand in their mouth, they might have their tongue may start to loll around, and all of these things are actually this incredible miracle. And so then the babe, then within about an hour, may then start to suckle and start to breastfeed with the mother. And something amazing that happens is the minute the babe starts to latch on and come onto the breast and start to, the first milk is not milk, it's called colostrum. And so it's this incredible, amazing transference of antibodies and this richness that comes to the babe. And when this happens, then in the mother, then her uterus starts to contract. And then as her uterus starts to contract, then even more of the colostrum starts to come for the baby. Then the baby suckles some more, and now the placenta is born. And then now once the placenta is born, any chance of the mother bleeding is abated and put at bay. And then as the babe suckles some more, well then eventually a day, 2-3 days later, the milk comes in. And as long as I've been doing this, I'll just look back and forth and go, oh my God, this is so extraordinary. And if we just let it be, and just let it be, it is so extraordinary, so beautiful. And so the kind of breath that we may have in this moment is more like that kind of breath at the very end, when we've done a breath session, when we're just in that, like the still point breath. That very soft, calm, very much present in the moment. And everybody in the whole place is in the moment. And even if there are children who are born of some of the worst experiences, I will say there will always be one of me in the room. Because the people who are in the room with the birth, we are in awe. We are in awe of this every single time. That awe never goes away. And so the fact that we are all here in this room and all of us have gone through this experience is an amazing miracle. It's a beautiful thing. And I bow to all of us that we chose to be souls and to come here and to be incarnated in this way. We are miracles. Thank you.
Babies that were conceived and born in love without trauma are easy to recognize. They are usually relaxed and content. They hold deep and alert eye contact and use crying very effectively to communicate their needs. They have excellent muscle and skin tone and demonstrate an amazing awareness of their own bodies. Later in life, they display a high degree of intelligence, kindness, common sense, good health, and hefty leadership traits. We're moving into a new era when science, technology, and spirituality are converging. How are we embracing this amazing transition? With our conscious intention and effort, we can embrace the opportunity and create a masterpiece of our life. We can regain our authentic power and clear the pain of our ancestors from our system. Over 150 million women gave birth this year. Imagine how the quality of humankind could improve in one generation by changing our birth practices and bringing our children into a world of love and safety. We can improve the quality of our life by moving beyond the imprint of fear and suffering. We have the capacity to experience the transformative power of birth and return to the magical feeling of being fully engaged in life, in the process of creating each day in harmony, as we choose to remember who we are.